If there was just a service, a go-to source that was out there that I trusted, knew of, that had a visual brand to it, that would find VAs for me, hell, I'd pay for that. So obviously the entrepreneurial alarm bells went off, and literally like 4 to 6 weeks later, we launched Virtual Staff Finder.
Welcome to CustomerBloom's Growing Business Faster podcast, where we talk about all things related to growing and scaling your business in today's hyper-connected world. Gain insightful tips from experts about the tactics and tools that will make your business stronger. Now get prepared to accelerate your success with your host, Matt Coffey.
So, hey, we have got Chris Ducker on the podcast today. And, Chris, there are two people I wanted on my podcast. So when our initial launch was Step Up, we really started with my local hero here in New Jersey, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he came on and did a great podcast. You're my international hero. So
good.
Yeah.
I'm so very, very privileged and honored.
I will tell you that for at least a year, there was only one book on my desk, and it was Virtual Freedom. Because
Nice.
I knew if I looked at that book every day, I could grow my team. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's going on with your life, what's going on with, Upreneur and all these things that are going on. So, Chris, I want to first talk about Virtual Staff Finder because it was the core piece. It probably still is, obviously, of really how you became visually aware in my mindset because you came across on a lot of podcasts. You talk about just the main play of how that kind of like initially started. You can take me back a little bit, but I want our listener to know how important Virtual Staff Finder is, just because it's really difficult. People think that finding VAs is easy, and I'll tell you, no.
It's not easy, particularly if you've not done it before, obviously, right? Like with anything else that you do, you get better at it with more practice, and hiring, particularly at an arm's length, is no exception to that rule. It's funny, Virtual Staff Finder, it actually was born, and we're talking middle of 2010 here. It was, well, actually, that's a lie. Well, we started working on it middle of 2010, but it launched September 2010. And it came out of a blog comment. And I'm a big advocate of building, P2P or people-to-people relationships. I'm all about listening to your audience, engaging with your community. And so I wrote a blog post on, the benefits of working with virtual assistants, why every solopreneur should consider, hiring one just to free up more time, buy more time ultimately as a result. And the post did very, very well. It was shared a whole bunch of times. And then this blog comment came in. And it said, I picked up the 4-hour work week. I read all about VAs. I've tried to hire a couple of people here and there and, in India and whatnot. And it's always been a complete disaster for me. If there was just a service, a go-to source that was out there that I trusted, knew of, that had a visual brand to it, that would find VAs for me, hell, I'd pay for that. So obviously the entrepreneurial alarm bells went off, and literally like 4 to 6 weeks later, we launched Virtual Staff Finder. So, and since then we've hired, I think we've enabled something like 4,500 VAs to be hired by entrepreneurs all around the world. It's been a great journey.
Yeah, that's really your kickoff point for me, and I think for a lot of people of getting to know you. And you have great personality. Obviously, you're full of energy, and everybody who I know, kind of follows you. I mean, that in certain circles, we all kind of know the general people that are good to listen to and have, good coordination and guests. And of course, we know a lot of the same people, or we've talked to a lot of the same people as well. What really makes you tick? What do you think is what is driving, the whole engine here?
It's action, man. I'm a very action-orientated, goal-orientated person, both in business and in life. And so I'm all about helping people take action. That's my all-out focus. I suffered that burnout, which I talk about in the book, in late 2009, and that was really the catalyst for me to, even though at that point I had well over 100 people working for me, I wasn't delegating anything. I was your typical A-type micromanaging pain in the butt boss. And so, it really, that burnout was really the catalyst for me to start taking action for myself, not just as a business, but for myself. And so you start delegating, you start automating, you start, marketing a little bit more seriously, and with a little bit more purpose behind it. And for me, it was all about really learning just how to set goals and take action on those goals. And since then, I've now been able to start help other people do that as well. And that for me that's what gets me going. That's what gets my juices flowing more than anything else is really seeing people saying, in January 1, I'm going to launch a landing page with a brand new opt-in magnet that I just put together. I'm very confident about this. I think it's going to be great, and I can't wait. And I'm going to run some Facebook ads. I've got a budget of $500. I'm going to push through for January, and I want to see how many leads I get. And then 30 days later, they give me an update and say, I launched the page, the opt-in did great, I spent the $500, and I got 1,200 new leads. Oh, God, that just gets me going. I love that stuff.
Well, that's great. I mean, you're a hardcore hustler in your own words, right? I mean, you're sort of the guy who seems to me, have the energy and the drive, and I think a lot of salespeople have this sort of mentality to win, and they're interested in the game. That's a big Gary Vee thing is they really like the game. It's not necessarily the things that they win, but it's more about but passing that on. And I wanted to say a quote here, and I want you to tell me what you think. The way to being nothing is to do nothing. Where did that come from?
My dad. Not originally. That would be really cool if my old man came out with that. No, but I mean, you've obviously heard me or talk about that quote somewhere else. It's my favorite quote of all time. It's actually originally from a gentleman called Nathaniel Hawthorne. And it took me quite some time to figure out and research that because many people have been credited with it, but apparently it is Nathaniel that said it originally. But what happened was actually I was in my teens. I was doing my exams. We call them the GCSE exam in the UK, which I guess is kind of like the SAT in the US, that kind of level of 16-year-old, that sort of type of thing. And I was flunking, man. We were halfway through the exam season. I knew I was doing badly. I was bumming off. I was playing hoops and skateboarding and chatting with girls and doing all that stuff. My father knew it. And one day I came back from I don't know what the hell I'd been doing, and I walked up to the top of the stairs and saw one of my father's business cards. He was a very, very successful architect in the city of London for a big firm over there. You look at the London skyline, he had his hand in probably 30 to 40% of those buildings in some way, shape, or form back in the 80s and the 90s. And he just wrote that on the back of one of his business cards. And it was the only kick up the butt I needed to start, studying properly. And I was able to claw back, and I asked teachers if I could retake a couple of exams. At first I got some no's, and then my father wrote some letters, and we got some yeses, and we, all that sort of stuff. And I ended up actually doing quite well. I still flunked a few and had to retake them the next year. But that really was the quote that kind of started me thinking a lot more seriously about just the future in general, because he was right, and Nathaniel, the way to be nothing is to do nothing. If you expect to be able to just sit back and have everything that you want in life and desire and aspire to be just land in your lap, you're high. Like, you're actually high on drugs. That is not going to happen. You're hallucinating. If you want anything in life, you got to chase it down. And that's exactly my mantra. That's what I'm all about, chasing it down.
So 2008, you're calling for cash, right? Those are the years where you really had to work, right? Where you had to get on the phone, and this is before sort of the whole process of, again, you came on kind of invisibility between the 2010 to 2013 era for most people. But what was the biggest lesson you learned in those kind of years where you kind of, it was one of those touch and go things? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through that phase where it's like, holy crap, how am I going to pay people? How am I going to do, What
Yeah.
was the lesson you learned in that environment until you kind of, again, you got stability, and then the book came out, and then forget it. You're fine. You're more than fine.
I'm doing okay now. I mean, it was, we were 6 months in business wise, and I looked at my online banking, and I had enough money in the account for 2 payrolls, so a month. Basically, we pay every 2 weeks here in the Philippines, and at the time, I had maybe 30 or so people working for me, and I had to make a major decision. We were on the cusp of going bankrupt after just 6 months of business, and so I fired the toxic client that was taking up all my time, that was not allowing me to do any real sales or marketing or biz dev work at all. I fired that client on a Friday afternoon via email. I chickened out, didn't get on the phone, and obviously got a horrible barrage of emails back over the weekend. But whatever, my business is more important than yours, kind of thing at this point. And I had to put all of my 30 staff on what they call here, with the Department of Labor and Employment in the Philippines, as a floating status, meaning they're not fired, they've still got a job, they're just not going to work for the time being, which means they're not going to get paid for the time being. And I put everybody on floating status, and I said, you guys are going to give me 2 weeks. You've been with me for 6 months. I'm asking you to give me 2 weeks. I'm going to do my best to turn this around. And if we do turn this around, we're going to be stronger than we ever have been. You have to trust me. And all of them said, okay, yes. And I hit the phones hard. I went back to my old school, sales and marketing days of cold calling and follow-ups. And I worked a good 12 hours a day for those couple of weeks. And I was able to claw in around about 17 or 18 seats worth of business for the call center, which was all we needed to keep things moving. And out of the 30 people that I ended up putting on floating status, we had 20, whatever it was, 22, 23 or something that came back. The others had already found other work. And, the lesson to be learned from that is that ultimately, when you are running a business, it always comes down to you as the business owner. You can't bitch and moan and cry over spilt milk and blame other people, because at the end of the day, it's you. It's your business. You're at the helm. You're the captain of the ship, and you need to steer the ship in the right direction. I did what I needed to do at that time to make sure that we didn't go under very prematurely. In my mind, it would have been a real shame. But here we are now, all these years later. We're at 450 people. I have an entire management team built out. I have 3 floors of a facility, and clients all around the world in a multi-7-figure business. So it's all down to you, man. That's where it comes. It all comes down to you.
I agree. And so I was out taking the trash out this morning, and
as you do.
Yeah. And so it just so happened the trash truck drove by, and I kind of giggled to the guy. I said, it's a warm day out. And he's like, you get used to it. Now, I didn't really even notice it, but it was only 15 degrees Fahrenheit out here in New Jersey. Okay. So that's pretty cold. I didn't really notice it, and I don't think the guy picking the trash up. So we're kind of used to it. It's like, it's cold. Who cares? Mm-hmm. But the reason why I'm saying that is I think, we get used to our environment. And imagine if you didn't fire that client. So I'm just thinking, like, do we need the necessary kick in the ass to make our change in our living? Or can we subliminally try and, push it in? And this is a big discussion, because that's where I think that sort of, that next level thinking starts to happen, is when you don't get forced into making like a bazillion calls and having to cram and 12 hours a day. But what happens if you actually figured it out and you said, you know what, I'll just work harder and or work smarter, whatever you want to call it, just because you figured out to do it that way instead of being forced to do it? And that's a big question. So are you just getting used to things, or should you sort of mentally or subconsciously, let's just say, I was going to say unconsciously, but whatever.
That would be a fun idea.
Exactly. But I think that's where I'm trying to sort of now tie together Youpreneur, right? So you build out your community. Now, we all know that this is the future, really, for a lot of people who are, let's just say, in the know, been through business, get it, have made it past the, let's just say, the point of stability to wealth, or at least to wealth levels where you're comfortable, things are moving. So in Upreneur, when you start your community, you start to bring your intelligence in. Do people necessarily need a kick in the ass, or can you like almost unconsciously get them aware of like things they could do to change the way that they look at the world and how they could grow their business? Because that's kind of what this is about. This is about how do we grow our businesses faster without the need to have a $50,000 client fall off the end of the planet, right?
Exactly. And, I'll tell you this one thing. I've never met an entrepreneur in my life that doesn't need support from like-minded people and that doesn't need to be held accountable, ever. I've never, ever, ever, ever met someone that doesn't need that kick up the butt from time to time, myself included, actually. Usually it's my wife that's doing that, or maybe it is actually one of my closest managers who's been with me since day one. She can quite regularly kick me up the butt, saying, boss, you need to be focusing on other things right now. And I think it's important. I think it's incredibly important for people to have that support and that accountability. And when I used to travel around speaking, I used to do these mastermind sessions where we would get a room full of people, 10 people usually, and you know what? I would notice that by the end of the day, even though the majority of people in the room to begin with were ultimately strangers, they might have maybe tweeted each other a few times or something, but they had never met before. I noticed by the end of the day, they were very, very close already, like to the point where they were telling each other seriously big secrets about their business, money, losses, profit margins, the whole kit and caboodle, stuff that I don't even share with some of the people that I class as very close friends. And I think it really just comes down to, that entrepreneurial loneliness that we all suffer sometimes when we're building our businesses, particularly online, because we're ultimately working alone the vast majority of the time. And people need that support. They need those like-minded voices and those eardrums. And that's why I think communities and surrounding yourself with the right people is so important to your business growth.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the new, right? This is the new now, maybe. Then that's probably part of the strategy of how we've got reciprocity between a lot of different environments, that if you can corral the right people, it grows on its own like a little flower. It just keeps budding. And, speaking of which, so let's talk about getting into some game changer things. And I like the fact that you're on Periscope, you're digging Snapchat now. Obviously, these are the sort of new tools of the trade. I really do think the live broadcasting is the new TV. I really do think that's where it's heading, because all the kids are now YouTubing. There's no TV for them anymore. I don't even think my son even watches TV. He just goes on YouTube. So the new live broadcasting with Periscope, and of course Facebook's got their own gig now, and Meerkat. But I'm just wondering, you have now 1,500 people coming to your sessions on a live event. How has that changed your marketing, and how is that affecting your revenue?
Well, when you go live, you get that instant audience feedback, don't you? That's the thing. It's like crack for egomaniacs. I'm all about wanting to connect with the right people. And with something like Periscope, when you tune into somebody for the first time on Periscope, and I mean literally, when you tune into somebody for the first time on Periscope, you are going to be able to suss them out pretty quickly. You're either going to like them immediately, or you're not going to like them, and you're just going to click away. And that's great, because ultimately your vibe will attract the right tribe for you. And I think that's the key right there to these live streaming. And I think that term live streaming, I heard Mike Stelzner say this a few days ago on Snapchat, actually. And I think he's so on the money with this. I think the term live streaming is slowly going to disappear. I'm now going to start calling it, as I know Mike is, and I will credit Mike for this because he's a smart fella. I will say that, his term and the term I'm now going to be using is live video. Simple. Because it's not just going to be about streaming from your phone anymore. It's going to be like, where is YouTube in this game? Seriously. When YouTube comes out with whatever live video, option or app or whatever it is that they've got to offer, and it's coming, it's got to be coming, it has to be coming. When they do that, how much of a game changer is that going to be for that platform as a whole? I mean, we have a cable TV show of our own in our pockets right now with Periscope, and nobody's really talking about Meerkat anymore. Blab maybe a little bit, but I hate the name. But Periscope for me is the 800-pound silverback gorilla of live video right now. And now they're rolling out new features like you can watch videos in the Twitter feed directly. You don't even have to be on the app anymore. That's gold, man. And that will help grow the Periscope app very organically, and such a smart move from Twitter. So, I mean, I think that, when you have the ability to be able to have an audience in front of you, it's that instant gratification, that instant feedback. TV stars don't even get this. They go into the studio, they shoot the show, it goes live 6 weeks later, whatever it is. Maybe it's the day after if you're Jimmy Fallon or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that they don't get that instant gratification. Yes, they can a little when it airs and they can pop on Twitter or something. But I mean, actual one-on-one communication right there in the moment. That's what live streaming and live video is going to give you. I can't wait. I mean, I wish this was around 5 years ago. It would have been a total game changer for my business. But it wasn't, so I'm engulfing myself in it now.
Right, so I think currency, right, today is attention. And with that in respect to Google owning YouTube, and whoever ends up winning at the end of the day, I think of the impact from an SEO perspective when live stuff gets pulled up in search results and that attention span goes right to a live feed. You can't get better,
so
right?
Oh,
and then Google's going to love it because they'll run ads in it. You'll see your little bleeps coming up, and people will live through that because it's live and I'm learning and I was looking for this, but now I can see somebody talk about it right now. Well, it's all good. One of the things you talked about is ego, and I do get the sense that you have a good personal branding strategy, but a lot of people have a company brand, and I wanted just to touch on this because you've come out really as your own brand, but Youpreneur is a company brand, but it's still kind of you, right? It's still Chris. What do you think, personal brand versus company brand? Gaining traction in either a personal brand, because obviously there's an element of trying to I guess I always thought the personal brand was going to be a challenge compared to trying to help my team be part of it. I always thought there was it's like a band, right? It's not just me, it's the team, the band. And I
Sure.
wanted to hear your opinion on that.
I think that, that there's room for both. And, I have several businesses. And, the funny thing is, Virtual Staff Finder was built very much on my personal brand when we got going. But now that we've been going for as long as we have been, going into our 6th year now, or 5th year, almost 6 years, I'm very out of that business. Like I am not seen on the website. I am not, in the marketing for it. It's very much become its own brand. So you can pivot. You know what? I don't think there needs to be a hard and fast decision from day one in regards to what you do from a branding perspective. However, I will say that I think that a personal brand is something that every CEO of every business should be looking to build, because it will help that business in the long run. And particularly in today's social world where everything is so, everybody is just so darn accessible nowadays. I think that a CEO that does not have a personal brand attached to that business is asking for trouble in one way, shape, or form, whether it be via complaints or whether it be from lack of visibility or whatever the case may be. And, you look at people, like Richard Branson with Virgin, Donald Trump with the Trump Group. You look at, even Gary Vaynerchuk with VaynerMedia. Everybody hires VaynerMedia, but they do it because of Gary.
I agree. And so I think this is one of those marketing questions. We deal with a lot of small businesses and medium-sized businesses, and I always come against this because, they all want the company to succeed. And I'm like, well, you're probably right at some level, but at a higher level, people want to do business with somebody, not a company. And we're going to go through this revolution where I think there's going to have to be some of this business of trying to enlighten people on visibility from a corporate perspective, because they've really, old corporate, like people 40s and beyond, they're not into it. Like they're gone. They're like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But there are some of us who are, very aware of how much that can be an advantage in the market space. So I wanted to talk to you. We have a couple more minutes, and I want to just get a couple more points across. I have a bazillion questions, but I've narrowed it down to some things I wanted to ask you. What's growing your business the fastest right now? What is the thing that you think is the most important thing that is driving new customer acquisition and the longest, as you see, maybe the longest run for a good tool, trick, or tip that you could impart with our listener?
Look, man, right now it's all about content. It's content on the blog, content on the YouTube channel, content on the podcast, content on Snapchat, content on Periscope, content, all day and all night, plain and simple. People, we're in this age, I think, right now where people genuinely are almost expecting for businesses to create this content, this helpful, original, high-value type content that will enable them to solve problems for free in their life, their business, their endeavors, whatever the case may be. For me, right now, we are all out, and my company is all out on content right now across the board. And that's not just content publicly, that's also content behind the scenes as well. So when I say behind the scenes, I mean email funnels, I mean copy for landing pages that have yet to go live, opt-ins that are being created that are yet to be released. All these things are happening right now behind the scenes that will, slowly but surely be drip fed throughout the course of this year. So it's all about content right now, man. It's all about content and providing that value.
Right, and you're going to have a great valued piece of content coming up in a few months at Tropical Think Tank.
Yep.
And maybe some of that content will be you singing some blues songs, right?
We'll see. There's a lot of factors involved in that, Matt, right? There's a lot of factors. Number one, is the band good? Because we don't jam with a bad band, and we don't hire bad bands. So that's a tick off right there. Number two, is there enough good quality bourbon in the house that night? If there is, now the likelihood of me jamming goes up just a notch or two. And then, there's the I guess the vibe of the party get me going, which it usually does. So yes, it probably will be jamming a little bit.
I'm glad to hear. In 2017, you're on my roadmap and you're on my radar screen, and it will be. And I'm sure that Matt Kimbley will join you for a bourbon. He's or a single malt, right?
Yeah. So usually a single malt with Matt, which I'm absolutely fine as well with. But Matt, he generally speaking does not have a problem enjoying a nice bourbon or a nice single malt.
Yeah, I'm dying to join you and help jam out the night, and I'll be happy to light up a searing hot blues guitar with you.
Yes,
if we can get in there. All right, so let's talk about wrapping this up with your real story, which is Youpreneur, which I wanted to get to. Tell people how, why, when, and really, I think if you can leave us with a few good calls to action, I think that would be great for people to understand if you've got this in your earbud right now, if you're going to join a community, this is the one.
You know what? I will say it's not for everybody. I want to say that right away, and some people might see that as playing a bit of a takeaway, but I'm serious. This is, the Youpreneur community is a community of people that are full, and they are, full of energy and enthusiasm, and they're all about taking action. And that, for me, is the key. And so, like I said, that's what gets me the most jazzed. That's what gets me the most excited. And Youpreneur is about helping people build a business around their personal brand, their wants, their desires, the people they want to serve, and that sort of type of thing. And for me, when you attract those kind of people, it really, truly, it's so rewarding, because when you've got the right kind of people like that all together, and you've got the right kind of leadership involved as well, it just gels. It just gels. We launched September 1. We currently have just over 400 members, and they are all doing incredible things. We did a mastermind call last night, and some of the stuff they're getting up to is just blowing me away. They're just so hot right now in regards to their goals and ticking off goals. I mean, we're halfway through January, and they're ticking off goals like it's the middle of March. Like, it's insane. So it's about enthusiasm. It's about support. It's about accountability. And if you say you're going to do something by a certain date and you don't, people will call your ass out in the forums. I mean, myself included, because I want people to succeed. I want people to genuinely build that dream that they want to be proud of. And that's exactly what Youpreneur is all about.
Great. And they can obviously go to chrisducker.com and find Youpreneur there, or they can go where else?
They can just go to youpreneur.com as well. Let's make life easy.
Of course. Well, I know that, that's why I was saying you have a personal brand, you've got Youpreneur, you've got your other business units, and,
sure,
all this stuff is easy to find. I mean, you're pretty well accessible. So in all the social channels, you've got 55,000 Twitter followers. So a few people know you. So
Yeah, I'm very blessed to have the very, very blessed to have the following that I have, and the clients and the just everything, man. I mean, like, the audience is just incredible. Every day I wake up and there's emails and tweets and all the rest of it. And I'm very, very blessed to be in the position where I am now. I didn't think it would be like this at this point in my career, but I'm very, very blessed to have the people following me that I do.
Awesome. And we're blessed to have you on the podcast, and I'm excited to get this out there and have our listeners really get some gems out of this. There's some great content in this, and thank you, Chris, and appreciate you jumping on the podcast. And hopefully we'll see you live soon, and then we'll be doing something completely different.
Yeah, we probably would be, and it was all my pleasure, man. You're a real inspiration, Matt. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
If you're prepared to grow your business even further, then join CustomerBloom's Adventure Mastermind in Paradise, or CAMP, for digital agencies and online marketers from May 2nd to May 4th, 2016 at the gorgeous Villa Amor in Sayulita, Mexico. The benefits are limitless as you gain unparalleled insight through mastermind workshops, new perspective through community connections, and insider knowledge from the real-world experience of speakers and other attendees. Log on to CustomerBloom.com now and click the camp link to get started on a life-changing journey guaranteed to accelerate your business and your mind. We've reached the end of this episode of CustomerBloom's Growing Business Faster podcast. So be sure to subscribe to the show and stay connected to us on CustomerBloom.com. We appreciate you joining us and look forward to providing you with realistic ways to help support and accelerate your business here on the Growing Business Faster podcast, brought to you by CustomerBloom.